Okay, am I all ready? Okay, hi. Today I'm going to be talking about the Chronicles of Narnia. Let's start with what I'm going to be covering. So this is not going to be a review of the Chronicles of Narnia, and it is also going to be full of spoilers. So if you have not read these and you don't want to be spoiled, don't watch this video. I'm going to get into spoilers almost immediately. Okay, and if you have not read this book, this series, don't really care about being spoiled, then hop on for the ride. So I just read the Chronicles of Narnia for the first time. And I had read them, or I had DNF'd the series as a child. So I started reading these when I was very young with my mom, and she was reading them out loud to me. And I think I got through the first few, and we got bored, and we decided not to continue on. So just remember that as I start talking about these as an adult, that I have no nostalgia for this series. And to be honest, by the end, I was pushing myself through just to get through this. This series is so well loved by so many people that I am very interested to hear people's opinions in why they love this series or why they don't. So I might be posing some questions. I might be talking about some stuff in this video. I would highly encourage you to leave a comment down below if you're interested in engaging with me about this, because I overall feel like more on the negative side toward the series. I didn't enjoy it globally. There were moments in it I did enjoy. I want this to be a conversation, and I want you to, if you feel like it, attempt to sway my opinion, because nothing I feel for the most part is grounded. I'm not solid in my feelings. So let's get into this. So if you are my age, you might recall seeing the series in this bind-up. This was republished in 1994 in this order. So this is not the publication order. This is the, I think, Macmillan. Hold on. I have the Wikipedia up. God, I'm so hot in here. I'm so sorry. I'm going to change. It is hot as heck in my house. I feel a lot better. I'm not re-recording that, though. Okay. So the rights to this series in the US were first owned by Macmillan Publishers and later by HarperCollins. Okay, so Macmillan, which was the first publisher, ordered them chronologically by when they were published. And then when HarperCollins took it over and won the rights to it in 1994, they changed the series order to be the chronology of the series' internal events, of Narnia, at the suggestion of C.S. Lewis's stepson, apparently. So before I got into this, I read the debate on which way you should read it. And I owned it in this order, so when I first started reading it as a child, I started reading it in this order. This is the order that Macmillan, I'm going to put it on this side, I think, that Macmillan published it in. And this is the original publication order that I read it in, because that is, when I did my research, what people said to do. I cannot really comment on whether or not I made the right choice. I feel like I did as I read through it, and I'll kind of go over that as I go through these books, because I think that you could read it in either order, but honestly, the earlier books in the HarperCollins order, which are later on in the series in publication order, I found more boring. So we're just going to go through some thoughts. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe is probably the most famous one, because it's the one that gets turned into movies and whatever. And I didn't like this one. I don't really know. It was fine. I was okay, but it didn't hook me. I wasn't thrilled by it. I also thought Edwin, is that what his name is? Edmund was a twat, and I didn't like him. And that's all I have to say about this one right now. Okay, then we moved on to Prince Caspian. I liked this one a little bit more than the previous one. This one felt like it went too fast. The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe had too much going on. Prince Caspian was kind of smoother. It introduced more interesting characters, in my opinion. And I liked the return of the children. I enjoyed that. Okay. Now we go on to the Voyage of the Dawn Treader. Now this is the one that I have most conflicted opinions about, because there are moments in this book that I really loved, but I also hated how it was plotted. So this had some characters in it I really loved, like the rat character, Ricky Cheek, I don't know. I'm really bad with names. The rat I loved, like the quest that they went on was fun, like they were, on this voyage, and I mean, it kind of gave me like Columbus Manifest Destiny vibes, which I'm not a huge fan of, but it was still like a fun adventure story, and I could see why people love this one a lot, because it was just enjoyable. And then we introduced Eustace, who is the original Four's cousin, and he is such a twat at the beginning, and I loved him. I loved him when he was just a little asshole. There was this part in here where he was like, they're on the ship, and they're on this voyage with Prince Caspian, and it shows him interacting with the people and how he's just being like very rude. And then you get to read like his thoughts, because he's basically keeping a diary, and he is just so deluded on what is happening around him, and he thinks that like everyone's out to get him and he's doing nothing wrong. And that contradiction, or like opposition to each other, I found hilarious. Now, once he turns into a dragon and then like learns his lesson, I didn't care about the book as much. I feel, and this is something I learned as I was reading it, is that I liked the book most when there was a character I enjoyed, because I really didn't like the plotting of these. Like, it was either, for the most part, too fast or too slow. There was too much going on. There was a fly buzzing around. Like with this, there was either too much going on, or like not enough going on, or like things were just happening haphazardly, and I had a hard time with the plotting of each individual book, and then the fact that the plotting of the entire series didn't really feel like it built up to anything. So in this one, I loved, what is his name? Eustace, until he became like good, I guess. Like he was taught his lesson, like the moral lesson of the story hit him on the head, and he was like, all right, I'm here for the ride now. I didn't like it as much at that point. I also didn't like how everything resolved so easily in this. Like, we go to like 30 places is an exaggeration, but we go to quite a number of places, and we just never get any payoff. It's just like something happens and they're put into an uncomfortable situation, and then they solve it very easily, and then that's it. And now I'm saying negative things, but at this point in the series, I was enjoying myself for the most part while reading. Like, I really like some of the turn of phrase that he used. I like the writing. I will say I listened to all of these on audio, so I didn't get to like see the pictures as I was reading, which probably takes away from the experience. At this point, though, we get into another reason I didn't really like The Voyage of the Dawn Treader. And this kind of ties into the entire series. And we're going to get into the religious aspects, which, just for awareness, I guess, while watching this, I was raised casually Catholic. We went to church on Sundays. I did not read the Bible religiously. I stopped going to church at a relatively young age when I made the decision that it wasn't for me. So I do not have a solid religious background, and a lot of the allusions in these probably went over my head. However, I am familiar enough, and I knew going into this series that it was religious, and that is not what bothered me with this. But throughout these two, there's this mystery around Aslan the lion and who he is, and he kind of just shows up, but sometimes you're not sure if he's actually there or if he's just this guiding figure. And I kind of thought, as I was reading it, that it was just like, ooh, magic. Like, you didn't actually, he was just magical. At the very end of this one, it becomes very apparent that Aslan, am I dark now? I hope I'm not dark now, but we're going to keep going. It was very apparent at the end of this that Aslan is God. And for me, that kind of sucked some of the magic out of this, because I thought the mystery around Aslan would be something different. I find that the reliance of Aslan as this myth, this figure, and this being that's really able to fix whatever is put in front of people, makes the whole series have less stakes. And I already felt that way in the first two books, but then when I kind of connected the dots that this was God and Aslan's world was heaven, I don't know, it just lost a little bit of magic for me. And I think that might not be the case for people who are maybe more religious than myself, but I was just hoping for a little bit more behind that. Okay, so then we went into the silver chair, and this was probably my favorite in the series, which is surprising. I guess I don't know which book is the most popular, but I didn't think this was going to be my favorite. In the first two, we're following the first four kids, Lucy, Peter, Edmund, and Susan. And then in this one, it's only Edmund, Lucy, and Eustace. And then in this one, it's Eustace and his friend Jill. And they drop back in when Prince Caspian is very old. So that is one thing I did enjoy about this, is that like we got to see a lot of time periods of Narnia. I liked those time jumps, and that they were a bit unpredictable. Prince Caspian's elderly, and they go on a quest to find his long lost son. And they end up with this character, I wrote his name down, Puddleglum. And I think this is part of the reason there's two reasons I like this one. One is that it was one story that we were following from start to finish. So the plot kept building up to something. It wasn't like we do this and then we resolve it and then we do this and then we resolve it. It was much more of like a build up to a conclusion. The second thing I liked was Puddleglum. He was just hilarious. He was like my favorite character of all of the series, and I wish he came back more. I laughed out loud at so many of his lines. And I liked that they actually came up against real danger in this. Like, they weren't always able to resolve things easily. Like, yes, there were plot conveniences in it. There's plot conveniences in this whole series, but for the most part, there was a bit more danger that they had to come across. I liked that I just liked the plotting. I liked that they went underground. I liked seeing Narnia from a different perspective. It was just more enjoyable for me. Editing me here. I didn't talk about this at all, but I kind of alluded to it here, is that one of the parts that I liked quite a bit about this book and just the series overall was the world building. So I talked about how I liked the chronology over time and how you got to see, the start and the beginning, or the start and the end of Narnia. You get to see like the entirety of civilization, which is interesting. But another thing that I liked about The Horse and His Boy, The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, and The Silver Chair, I think those are the main ones, is that you got to experience different parts of the world. So not just Narnia, but the places outside of Narnia. So The Voyage of the Dawn Treader, while I didn't like that you're constantly on the move, and I think we saw too much, I still liked that we were experiencing these different places, and it made the world itself feel a lot richer. It's not just this one country, it's this like whole universe. The Horse and His Boy, while we'll get into this later on in the video, I don't exactly like the representation of these people. I liked that he did provide a different culture, he did provide a different location, he did provide different civilizations, and again, with the one I'm talking about right now, the Silver Chair, we went into this whole underground world that we didn't even know existed. And then at the end of that, we find out there's another layer underground that exists. So the world building of the place, like how much was explored in so little time, while I feel like that was a detriment plot-wise, I did enjoy it from a world building perspective. Now, this isn't a huge qualm, but we have a big bad witch at the end of this. A witch is the problem here. Female witch. And then a witch is the problem here. And at this point I'm like, why does it gotta be female witches? Like, what do we have against witches? It's not a warlock, it's a witch. All like the men coming in and like getting shit done and saving the day, and then the women are witches. So like, I mean, it's a sign of the times, but it's still I am allowed to be annoyed by it. Then the series just went totally downhill for me. So The Horse and His Boy is like a prologue, which is why it came earlier in the republishing or the rebranding of the series. Because now we're back in time during the time that the 4 kids grew up there, and we are in wherever the Calormen live. So we have this white boy, Shasta, who is being raised by the people of color who live in this world who are against Narnia. And this is where race might have come up earlier, but this is like the introduction of race into the series, which I don't want to touch on too much because people gotta have an opinion, but it was just of course, the women and the people of color are the bad people, but the white men are the do-gooders who can turn a new leaf, and they're allowed to have this like moral character change and etc. Oh, before I really talk about this one though, another qualm I had, which I think makes it more enjoyable for children potentially, but as an adult reader with no nostalgia for the series, it annoyed me. I could have switched out Eustace for Edmund at any point in the series. And I think that that's a problem I have with all the children, is that they're kind of replaceable. I mean, Susan is definitely different than Lucy and Jill, but Lucy and Jill are fairly similar. And Peter, Edmund, and Eustace, we talk about Peter as being the High King, so that makes him feel different, but as a character, he didn't really feel different for me, which I think for kids is fine, because a kid is going to put themselves into the character. So you want these characters to kind of be, or it's fun for kids maybe, for the characters to be this blank slate, and you're like, oh, I'm a boy, I'm a girl, I can just throw myself into this headspace and pretend I'm Lucy or pretend I'm Edmund, and kind of feel like you're living it a little bit more, because like they're wet blankets. Okay, so The Horse and His Boy. I liked the horses in this, but just I found this boring, and it out of place. Like, I just didn't care about any of the characters or anything that was going on. It didn't really totally feel like it connected very well to anything else. There is, in a previous book, they do mention this story and go, but that's a story for another time, and so this is the other time, and yeah, it just didn't have too much going for it. So I feel like if I followed the HarperCollins order and I read this third, I would have lost steam for the series a lot sooner. Okay, I thought I would go through this a lot faster. And then we get on to The Magician's Nephew, which was fine. I enjoyed it well enough. I liked getting the prequel aspect. So they called this book number 1, and this is the creation of Narnia, and this gets very biblical. Aslan comes in, and Aslan is God, and Aslan creates this place, and we have the Adam and Eve characters, which are Diggory and Polly, and in this one, Diggory's the one that has to go get an apple from the tree and not eat it. So luckily, because it was Diggory that went in and not Polly, he resisted the temptation. So we didn't have an Adam and Eve situation happen. Oh, man. I enjoyed the characters in this one. I liked that there were unlikable characters. I liked that it explained how the witch got into the world. It was good for a prequel. I enjoyed it for that aspect, and I liked that I had read most of the series by the time I read this, because I felt like if you had read this first, you would know everything about the world. Like, the biblical elements would be like a bit more on the nose for throughout the entire thing. So that was a good one. Oh man, and then we got to the Abomination. I'm so sorry for people who like this, but the Abomination that was the last battle. I don't think you can convince me to like this one. I have a few problems with this one. First off, there's no setup for it. We're talking about the last battle of Narnia, and never in these previous 6 books that I remember are we saying that there's going to be a last battle of Narnia. So there's no setup, and like, as a series, this series has no arc. Like, there is no overarching arc. It's just like Portal Fantasies, where you go and you get to see this land, this Narnia, at different points in time. So then you go into this battle, and it's like 7 of them versus a bunch of Calormans who are now like these super evils who have like a monkey with them. Like, it was just weird. Like, it was like there's a fake Aslan, and suddenly Tash, who is supposed to be the Calorman's god, who we find out at the end of the book is the devil, which is a whole situation in itself. Is like, and so they're praying to the wrong god, and they actually pray to the devil, but some of them don't actually believe in Tash. Where did Tash come from? Like, we should have had build up to Tash in any of these other books. Like, the other books where Calormans were introduced, and like, we could set up this division between them, because Aslan basically says they're sides of the same coin. He's God, and Tash is the devil. And there's this battle, I guess. Like, it was the weeniest battle. Like, the fact that they called this the last battle is just a misnomer. So then they have this weenie battle, and then they all go through this door that's in a barn, and then they end up in Second Narnia, and they were never really in the true Narnia, because this Narnia is heaven, and Narnia is there, and London is there, and blah, blah, blah. And why that happened? So the fact that they were all on a train, like all of like the London characters who still believed in Narnia, which was not Susan, because Susan became a hussy. Just, of course. Susan lost her imagination. They all end up on a train, and they all get thrown into Narnia as the train is crashing, which is alluded to in this book. And so they got sucked in, and they're all actually dead now, and now they're in heaven, which is Second Narnia, which is also London, which is etc. I liked that aspect. Like, I liked that they all died and got to stay. I thought that was an interesting thing, but like, just the battle with Tash, and like the battle between the Calormans, which Calormans is just a name. It was just horribly disappointing as a book. Like, horribly disappointing. But I guess now, like, Susan just like lives by herself, and like her whole family except for her is dead. Like, that's pretty fucked up. All for her being a hussy. The morals of these are very in your face. I think, like, as a kid's book, you do have to be a bit more transparent with what your themes are, but it was very heavy-handed. I think that plotting-wise, the series was all over the place, because some of them just follow one story, some of them follow like a story where a bunch of things happen and you're not building towards one thing, you're just doing a lot of things, and then the series as itself never builds to anything. Like, there is no arc, which is why HarperCollins felt like they could just come in and change the reading order, because it doesn't build to anything. And I think that part of the problem for me, and this is not me being anti-religion by any means, but I felt that C.S. Lewis was trying so hard to hold to these biblical allusions, especially in the seventh one with like everything going underwater and him saving certain people and bringing them to heaven and all of this. Like, it felt like he was holding so hard to the Bible almost as like a retelling in aspects, not just biblical allusions, but almost like a biblical retelling, that he lost some opportunities for creative ways to change the series. Like, it just felt like the seventh book came out of nowhere just to fit the biblical narrative, which I think is unfortunate for the series. So I guess I talked a lot about my experience, but I'd really be interested into hearing other people's experience, like maybe of books specifically, maybe of the work as a whole, maybe about your feelings and the biblical allusions. Are you able to see past the racist and sexist elements? I'm curious about all of your stances on that, all of your opinions. As I said, I overall don't have like a positive experience reading this, like overall when I think about the series as a whole, but I did have moments that I really enjoyed, especially the silver chair. I would be interested for you to answer all the questions I had said before. Also, which one's your favorite? And I think that's all I got. So thank you for being here. And until next time, happy reading.